right, let me, before I open the floor up, provide a general analysis of the situation. Anders and Ed have provided exceptional commentary on sanctions and Ed's case, the broader policy. But let me lay this out, because so far we've been talking only about the West and about Russia. We have not been talking about Ukraine, and we had to put Ukraine into this game as well. Sanctions have worked to the extent that they've made Mr. Putin rely on stealth, running an insurgency rather than sending in his army. So they've done that. His stealth campaign, his insurgency, has more or less effectively established control in one medium-sized city, Slavyansk, and in selected places in Luhansk and Donetsk and elsewhere. That's it. Ed is right. The time works for the Kremlin if, in fact, the Ukrainian security establishment is incompetent. There is no reason why a country which has the armed forces of Ukraine's size, the police, and the secret police, the SBU, should not be able, at a minimum, to contain the damage being done by the insurgents by cordoning off the areas where they control. I heard from, I'll be a little bit discreet, I heard from someone who is very high in Ukrainian security service just a few days ago, that in fact he says they can do this. Well, if they can do it, they should. If they can't, then Mr. Putin will probably, not definitely, but better than 50% chance be able to achieve his objective. And his objective is, at a minimum, to control a substantial part of Ukraine, or to exert effective influence over a substantial part of Ukraine. That's his minimum objective. And he can achieve that, or he may be able to achieve that via an insurgency if the Ukrainian security forces are unable to manage it. All right, that's point one. Point two, the United States has done, in my opinion, and I know that Ed and Anders don't fully agree with me, a reasonably good job in the sanctions area. A reasonably good job in the sanctions area. Because they've been able to pull Europe along reluctantly. And the fact that Chancellor Merkel said just 2 weeks ago here in Washington with President Obama that if there are disrupted elections, there will be sectoral sanctions on Russia, or there may be sectoral sanctions. That's a big deal for her to use that phrase, sectoral sanctions. And I'm sure that was noted in the Kremlin. Now, whether or not she means it, I'm not certain, because there are major pressures on her not to proceed in this direction. If Europe, Chancellor Merkel, her colleagues in Paris and London are unwilling to go along with the major sanctions we need, and if the Ukrainian security forces are unable to do their part, then there's only one possibility for this crisis coming to a positive outcome. And that is for the United States to go after Russia with sanctions the way we went after Iran, as Anders was saying. Because if we do that, the Europeans will have no choice but to comply. Because while Russia may be important for some segments of the European economy, the United States is absolutely critical. And financial institutions in Europe, or companies in Europe which conduct business with Russia, if we go this option, will be unable to do business with the United States. And we know what they will choose. I don't know if Washington is willing to go that far. And frankly, there are friends of Ukraine in Washington who say, why isn't Ukraine standing up? And they're referring to the security services in Ukraine. So I can't underestimate the importance of this. One last point, which comes back to something that Ed said. Now again, I give the United States moderately good marks for its handling of the sanctions policy. I think that the United States gets a D or worse on the security side of this crisis. Because in fact, if the United States were to provide completely reasonable military assistance, the chances of the Ukrainian security forces doing what they need to do would go up. We have some experience at our own cost in counterinsurgency operations over the past decade. We should be providing counterinsurgency advice to the Ukrainians. We should be providing counterinsurgency equipment, body armor, night vision goggles, secure communications. We should be providing intelligence, although we have to be careful because we know the Russians have done a pretty good job in infiltrating Ukrainian security establishment. But we're smart enough to figure that out. Finally, just as a little reminder to the Red Army, we should be providing anti-tank and anti-aircraft weaponry. Because, last point, if the Ukrainian security services can deal with the insurgency, then Mr. Putin has a really tough decision to make. Is he going to send in the army? Because he knows if he sends in the army, then even France will understand he cannot sell Mistral and it has to produce big sanctions on Russia. We don't have to go nuclear on sanctions because the Europeans will have to come along. Or, so he has to say, I'm going to cripple my economy in order to realize my ambitions in Ukraine. And if that's his choice, I don't know what he's going to do. But the man is not stupid. He's not stupid. So there's a good chance he would do the intelligent thing, which in this case would happen to be the moral thing.